Hi, Gerald here, and welcome to another one of my how-tos in Fusion. This time I want to show you how I would make what I like to call a flyout menu or a pop-out menu. Like you might see in quite a few games, they'll have like a little option button. As you can see in the example I got already loaded up here, down in the corner. So an options button, when you click on it, some buttons fly out from it, and you can click on these to do various things like exit the game or get help on the game, or turn sound effects on and off, and turn the music on and off. And then when you click on it again, the buttons fly back in what it seems like in behind the option button. Or if you click on screen anywhere, same effect happens. Anyway, that's what I want to show you, how to make this fly out or pop out effect. This video has nothing to do with the buttons themselves. It's just showing you how I would do the pop out or fly out effect. Yeah, so that's what I want to attempt to show you, how I would do it in Fusion. So I've already got a blank Fusion opened and ready to go, and I will call this FlyOut Menu. I've already got the objects already made, because I've already made this example. I just want to show you how I would do it through events, step by step. So I can just use all these pre-made buttons that I've already got made. So what do we need? We need an options button, and we need our remaining buttons: the exit button, the help button, sound effects button, and music button. We got an overlay object that we're going to use to, once you click on the options button, it will, well, I'll show you. You click on the options button, it gives this nice dark overlay. That'll be over top your game once it's paused, and all your buttons will sit on top of the overlay. So that's what that's for. And then we'll use this template, just because I don't like looking at a white screen. I'll lock that down so I can't touch it or move it. And of course, my favorite object for moving things in Fusion is the easing object. There, that's all we need. I'm just going to set these off to the side for now. And as you can see in the values, the multiple values of all these objects, I already have some values set up. Same thing with the overlay, and I'll show you what all these are for as I go. Alright, to get started, first things first, I need to, at the start of my frame here, at the start of the game, I want to position my option button and make sure it's down in the bottom right corner here. You can put it anywhere. You can set it up to position it wherever you want. But for now, I'm going to show you how I do it in the bottom right corner, and then I'll show you how I would change it to be in the top left, top bottom left, wherever. First event, group of events. I'm just going to call it options button. I do everything in groups. Makes everything more organized and easier to understand. Oh, we're going to keep that checked and start. Group activation. I want to position my option button in the bottom right corner. I'm just going to go ahead and set this up, and then I'll go back over it and tell you exactly what I did and what it means. So I'm going to set its X position. I'm going to set it to the frame, the right visible edge of the frame, minus it's, come on now, what are you doing that for? Minus its width divided by 2 minus a value I have set up that I call distance from edge, like so. I'm going to do the same thing for the Y position of the object, of the button. This time I'm going to go frame, bottom left visible edge, or the bottom visible edge, minus its height, divided by 2, minus that same value that I have set up called distance from edge, like so. So when I run the frame now, I'll just put it off so you can see that it works. There, it's in the bottom right corner, right where I want it, set based on the value I set distance from edge. So that's the pixel count from the edge. It'll be from the right edge and from the bottom edge. As you can see, if I change it to something crazy like 100, that's where it'll be 100 pixels away from the edge and from the bottom edge here. But I want to keep it something nice like 10 or 20 pixels from the edge, like so. That's exactly where I want it. Now let's break it down. Why did I do that? I'm going to go into the event list editor here. Okay, so this is the action here that sets it to the position that I chose. Now, if I delete all this except for set it to the right edge of the frame and run it, you can see where the button is. And the reason for that is because the hotspot for this button is in the center. So if I leave it as I have to the right position of the frame here, because the hotspot's in the center of the button, it sets it at the right at the right edge of the frame. I want to obviously push it back to the left. So to do that, we'll take the width of the button divided by 2, because I have the hotspot in the middle, and that should push it out into the frame, back into the frame. Now the last part of the action here is to move it another 10 pixels that I set up in the distance from edge value. Move another 10 pixels out from that, like so. I hope that makes sense. And the same thing obviously for the Y position. Anyway, that's the reason for that. Okay, now that I got the position set up for the option button, I am going to start a new group, and I'm going to call it options, or pause. I'll call it options. Active at frame start. So I'm going to, oh, that's funky. Change that. I don't like that. So first event in here is when we click on the options button, we're going to start a new group of events that I will call pause game. Unchecked, active when frame starts. Now you'll notice all these 4 buttons here. I've set a qualifier for them. So I've used the generic 1 qualifier, and that's what you'll see up here, the qualifier. So that's for these 4 buttons. Then when we click on this button, we're going to activate this group, pause game group, and what we're going to do, I also gave these 4 buttons a flag that I call FlyOut. So by default, that FlyOut flag will be set to off. So when we start the group and this flag is off, the FlyOut flag, because it's off by default, we're going to move our buttons. But before we do that, up here where we click on the button, we're going to set all 4 of these buttons to the same position of the options button. So these 4 buttons here, I'm going to position them in behind the options button so you don't see them, and then I'll move them. So I'm going to set their position to the option button, and I'm going to bring the option button, make sure that I bring it to the front so that these buttons are hidden behind the options button. There, once I do that, so I click on the options button, I move these 4 buttons behind the option button, activate this group, their flag is off, the FlyOut flag is off, so I'm going to move the objects now, and I'm going to use the easing object. So we're going to move the buttons, and we're going to do ease in, ease out. We'll do cubic and cubic, and the X target will be its own X position because it's hidden behind the options button, so we want it to start there. So that's the starting point minus the value that we set up and its X move. And same thing for the Y position. We're going to use its own Y position minus the value we set up and the Y move. And for the speed, we get a value set up in each one of the buttons called outspeed. We're going to use that to move the speed of each button separately when we click on the button. Now let's look at those values for a minute here. We get the X move, Y move, and outspeed and in speed. So the outspeed is how quickly each button will move outwards once you click on the button, and the in speed will be how quickly the buttons move back in behind the option button. And the X move is the position where they will move to, and the Y position is where each button, their Y position, where it will move to. Now each one obviously is set differently. The outspeed for the exit button, because it's going to be, I'll show you how it'll look. It'll look something like that, right? Like a nice little semicircle kind of thing. I want the music button to move out first, and then the sound effects button to come right directly behind it, and then the help button, and then the X button will move last. And that's what this outspeed here is for. You can see the outspeed for the exit button is set at 600, and 500 for the help button, and 400 for the sound effects button, and 300 for the music button. Now for the remove values, I want the exit button to be about 200 pixels away. I want it to move up about 200 pixels from the options button. So I'm going to set its Y move to 200, and I'll set its X move to 0 because I want it to be in the same X position as the option button. For the music button, I want it 200 pixels away from the option button on the X. Oops. And for the Y, I want it in the same position. I've already done the math. Obviously, you're going to have to do your own math when you set these values up for your own buttons. But to make a nice little semicircle here, for the help button, I'm going to set its X, I want it 96 pixels away, and on its Y, I want it 168. And for the sound effects button, I want it 168 for the X. Oh, not 1068, 168, and 96 for the Y. Like so. Let's see what happens. See if I did this all right. Oh, one more thing. Once we move each one of the objects, we need to turn their flag on, like so. Let's see if it works. So we click on the option button, and I forgot to activate the group. We need to activate the group. So yeah, restart. Oh, nice little effect there. So you can see this one comes out first, and then this one, then this one, and then this one. And obviously you can play around with the easing object and choose different movements for whatever you like. I like the fact that I just showed you. But it's your game, you do what you want. So once the buttons have popped out, we want to set up another group of events that's going to retrieve or bring the buttons back in, fly back in. So to do that, we'll go, once the buttons have stopped moving, we'll deactivate this group. We're going to activate a new group. So we'll start a new group of events, and we'll call it unpause. Unpause game. Uncheck active when frame starts. So now we'll activate the unpause group. Now in here, we're just going to drag this down and we're going to negate it. So when the group of buttons and their flag flyout is on, and it's on because we set it on here in this event, right here, we're going to move them back in. So to do that, we'll go to the easing object, and this will be a little easier because now we just have to move them back in behind the option button. So it should be a little easier to set up. So we'll move object, those buttons. This time we'll do, let's see, I think we'll just use ease in this time, and I'll do back. Yeah, that should work. That should look alright. So the X position, because we're moving it in behind the option button, we'll choose its X position. That's where we want to move it to. Same with the Y position. We want to move it in behind the option button. And for the speed, we'll use the in speed. And for the end speed, I think I set it all the same. No, I didn't. Yeah, I set it all different. So same thing. They'll all move in at a different speed. Yeah, like so. And then we'll set this flag back off, the FlyOut flag, so that we can click on the button again later and fly them back out. Let's see if it works. I don't think it will. What do you think? No. So what happened? Well, it's because these two events are going against each other. That's why I added an extra value in the option button that I called the pause state. So we need to add a couple more conditions here. So, hang on a sec. We'll go back up here where we click on the button for the first time. We'll add a new condition, and we're going to say when the pause state is at 0, we're going to set the pause state to 1. And then down in here where the objects have stopped moving, we'll set the pause state to 2. So when we first click on the button and the pause state is 0, we'll set the pause state to 1. So that means this event will no longer be true if you click on the button, because the pause state is now set to 1. So then this event should activate, and the buttons will fly out. And then once all the buttons have stopped moving, we'll set the pause state to 2. So now we'll add a new event in here, and we'll say when the player clicks on the pause button again, but this time when the pause state is at 2, that's when we'll activate and deactivate these two groups. Let's try that out and see if it works. See, I don't know if I've forgotten anything else here. I don't think so. So we'll click on it the first time, they fly out. Click on it again, they fly back in. Click on it again and it won't work. And that is because we need to set up another new event. So down here again, once the objects have stopped moving, so they've all moved back in behind the option button, we need to set the pause state back to 0. So that we can do this all over again. And of course we need to deactivate this group. Unpause. That should work. Let's see what happens. Click on it the first time, they fly out. Click on it again, they fly back in. Click on it, yep, there we go. Alright, so that works as we want. Yes, yes. Now we could add another event so that, well actually, we'll add another event that says if you click anywhere on the screen here, once these are popped out, then they'll slide back in. So up here, we'll add another event. So we'll say when user clicks, so anywhere, clicks anywhere on the screen with the left mouse. And same thing, the pause state is set to 2. And we're going to make sure, I'll show you first. We'll just drag that down and deactivate and activate this next group. Let's see what happens. So we'll click, flies out, click anywhere on the screen, flies back in. It works. Well, look what happens. If I click on this button, they shouldn't go back in because I want that button, I want to click on the button. So we'll add another condition here. We'll say if the mouse pointer, check for it over, make sure it's not over any of the buttons. We'll just negate that. So as long as the mouse button is not over one of these when it clicks on, when you click on the screen, see it doesn't work, but if you click up here it does. Yeah. One more thing that could happen. If you click this, really see what's happening there? If I click on it too quick, so we'll add a new condition. We'll say if the mouse pointer is not over the option button, then that shouldn't happen anymore. But they do disappear. Good. Alright, moving on. We want to make a nice little overlay so that when you click on, once you click on the option button, a nice little black overlay will overlay your game. To do that, we're going to use this overlay object, and I've set its size at 64 by 64. Just keeping the power of 2 rule going there. Now, depending on what you're making this for, I mean, if it's going to be for mobile, then you don't want to be creating and destroying objects all the time. If it's for Windows or something like that, then it's no big deal. There's 2 different ways you can do this. I'll show you the Windows version first, and then I'll show you how I would do it for mobile. which is the way I'd probably do it for Windows anyway. But anyway, I'll show you both ways. Alright, so for the first way, let's say you're doing it for Windows and you don't care about destroying and creating objects all the time. I'll just start a new group here, and I'll call it overlay. Oops. Overlay group. I'm going to leave it active at start for now. Now, I am going to take this overlay object and I'm going to create a bunch of them so that it fits across the screen like so. But when it does, it obviously will look like one piece. So I want to make sure this is unchecked. Create a start. Yep. And we can uncheck use find detection. We don't need that. And destroy objects from too far frame. That's not necessary. What else? Alright, so I'm going to start a loop. So on group activation, start a loop, and I'm going to call it overlay X. Copy. And the number of loops for I'm going to do this, and I've set up some values in options button, and I call it pause overlay X and pause overlay Y. So I'm going to retrieve the pause overlay X. That's how many times I want to run the loop on the X. And on loop overlay X. I'm going to start another loop. I'm sure you know about loops, so I'm not going to explain all these to you. And I go overlay Y. Oops. And this time I'm going to go overlay Y times. Now on overlay Y, I'm going to create an overlay at 0, 0. Now let's look at the hotspot in this. The hotspot in this one is in the top left corner. So when I said create them at 0, 0, the first one's going to be created right here. Now for each new piece that it creates, I have to set its position. So I'm going to set its X position to loop index overlay X, not Z, X, times its width, oh boy, times its width. Set its Y position to loop index Y this time, overlay Y, times, oh, what am I doing? Its height. Good. And then close the group up once it's done all that. So only one action when event loops. We're going to deactivate the overlay group. And actually I don't want this started when the frame starts. I want to activate this group, this overlay group, as soon as I click on this button. So at this point I'm going to activate the overlay group. One more thing, let's do this in layers. So we're going to add another layer, and we're going to take all of our buttons and move it to the new layer that we created, like so. Let's see what happens. Click on the button and it creates this nice overlay here. And because we move these buttons up to this other, to the other frame, this other layer, and overlay is being created on the first layer. So these buttons will stay on top of the overlay. Now I have some values set up in this overlay, and the first one is the fade speed, the X position, Y position, and the alpha value. I used alpha for this. You can use semi-transparent. It's up to you. I probably should have used semi-transparent, but I've gotten in the habit of using this. So under its properties here, this display properties, you can see I have this blend coefficient C set to 40. And if I had it set to 0, and I run this, you see it's pitch black. And we don't want that. We want it to fade out a bit. So that's why I used 40 for that. Like so. Anyway, once we move the objects back in, we want to destroy this overlay. Now, I don't use behaviors a lot, but this is one good example of where a behavior would be good in an object. So in the overlay, I have some behavior set up, and what it's saying is when flag 0 of the overlay is on, and you know what? We call that flag. Let's call that flag something. Let's call it fade out, something like that. Go back into the behavior. When the flag fade out is on, what I want to do is set its go in here. We're going to set its alpha coefficient to its alpha coefficient plus the fade speed, which is the value I have set up here called the fade speed. And once it's on, once its alpha coefficient is more than 255, I originally had to set up to not destroy it. What we'll do is we'll destroy it. That way when we go into our events and we move the objects back in, at this point all we have to do is set the flag of the overlay object to on. So it creates it, the fade, the overlay, and then when we hit the options button again, it fades out and then it destroys it. It's a neat little effect. I like it. And just to go into the behavior of this yourself and then take a look at what's going on, I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. But that's a good example of one reason to use a behavior, because we want all that to happen, to fade out and to be destroyed outside these group of events, because these groups get deactivated and it could cause some freaky unexpected results that you don't want. Oh yeah, and the overlay here, or sorry, not the overlay, the options button right here. When it creates the overlay, it does it through the pause overlay X and pause overlay Y. I have it set to 10 by 8, so it'll create 10 by 8. So that's 80 of these that it creates to fill the screen. Obviously, if your screen size is different, you're going to have to change those values to enough to fill the screen. Do the math and figure it out. Now, I'll show you the other way in case you're going to use this for mobile game or something like that. I'm going to close this up for a sec. And I'm just going to move this up here. Actually, we'll move it up here. Now, to change this, so I want to create these at the start. So I'm going to activate this at start. And under here, where I've set the position, I'm going to set their values, X position and Y position, to the current position. So when they get created, and then whatever position they're in, we're going to set those values into their X and Y alterable values that we set here. So we'll set its X position to its current position. Same thing with the Y. We'll set its Y position to its current Y position. And then once they all get created on the screen, in the event here where we deactivate the group, we're just going to move them off the screen. Just move them off the screen so you can't see them. Like so. So that should create them at start, and they're off the screen up here in the top corner. That way we're not going to be creating and destroying them every time we click on the option button. Now of course we got to change a few more things. So now we don't want to activate that group anymore because what am I doing here? I got to delete this event, So we don't want to activate the overlay group because we've already created them and they're already setting off to the side of the screen so we can use them when we want to. So now all we have to do is set their X position to the value we set up in X position, and set their Y position to the value we set up in their Y position. And then go back into the behavior. We need to change a couple things in here because it's currently set up to destroy them. We want to destroy them. We just want to move them back off the side of the screen once they fade out again. So we'll get rid of this destroy. So once they're faded out, we're going to set their position up here again, outside the screen. So whatever, minus 64, like so. And then we're going to turn that flag off so we can use it again. Fly out, yep. And then we'll set its alpha blending again back to a value that I set up in here, the alpha value, which is this value here. We'll set it back to 40. So that should work. Let's see. Yep. They fade out. And obviously you can change the speed too, so if you want it to be quicker, it fades out quicker. But I'd keep it at 5 or something like that. So there. So one more thing I'll show. What happens if you want to put the button up here, or over here, or over here? Well, we can do that. So under options button, got a value set up here. I'll position in frame. And what I've made this for, obviously you wouldn't use this if you're going to keep it in one spot. You don't have to worry about this. This is just to show you how you would do these. Set everything up if you wanted it in a different position. Okay, so position 1 will be up in the top left corner. Position 2 is going to be in the top right corner. Position 3 will be down here where we already have it. And position 4 is going to be over in the bottom left corner. So, not to drag out this, because this video is getting long. I already have all this stuff set up, so I'm just going to copy and paste from my other example that I made. So give me a second, and I will just up here paste it in here like so, and I can get rid of this first event that I had. So currently, you can go through these and take a look at the actions here that I made. Basically what each one's doing. So remember I told you position 1 would be the top left corner, so it'll be up here, position 1. It'll position the option button to the right position, and it'll set each one of these buttons here, their X move and Y move, to the proper position that they will need to move out and move back in. So just, if you want to check them out and see what I did, just go through them here, and I'll just show you how it works. So let's go back here. So it's set. We'll set it to 1, position in frame, and this is how it would look. Push on the button. Set to position 2, top right corner. Oh, see, I messed that up somehow. Let's see what I did here. I did some. Oh, that's what it is right there. I got the wrong value here. It should be pause state. Like so. That should work now. There we go. We set it to 3. That's where we normally had it. And set it to 4. Yeah. So there you go. You can go through it. I'll make this example available to download if you want, and I'll see if I can add some comments in here too. Yeah, any questions or whatever? Hopefully I explained that well. That's it. Cheers.